Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Purpose Tune podcast. My name is Kong Shang. I am the host of the show. The goal of this podcast is to create valuable content to broaden your knowledge, inspire you to act, and get you in the right mindset so you can apply it in your own life to drive impact, generate meaning, and achieve your purpose. Now, today's guest is Malvika Jethmalani. I hope I pronounced it correctly.
Perfect.
Um, Malvika is a three-time Chief Human Resources Officer and the founder of Atvis Group, a human capital advisory firm built on the belief that winning in the marketplace starts with winning in the workplace. She has 15 years of experience across consulting, manufacturing, CPG, healthcare technology, and mobile gaming, and has led global people teams supporting up to 5,000 employees across 50 countries. She specializes in HR strategy, talent management, organizational effectiveness, and leadership development, using her data-driven approach to solve complex people challenges, boosting employee engagement, reducing turnover, and driving cultural and business transformation. Malvika, beyond HR, Malvika is a strategic businesswoman shaped by her experience as an interim CFO and COO, along with deep expertise in M&A on the buy and sell side and turnaround leadership. Her ability to align talent strategies with business goals make her a trusted advisor to high growth organization. She holds a bachelor's at the University of Illinois Chicago and an MBA from Northwestern University's Kellogg School of Management. Thank you so much, Malvika. I appreciate your time here, and I hope the introduction was a smooth one for you. I know that was a lot of experience, which I love because the guests that I have on the show are people that are deeply knowledgeable about their field of work, and so welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. So aside from what I've shared with the listeners, share more about your personal story. Like, how did you get involved with this line of work and what inspires you to keep going?
Yes, so as you shared in my introduction, I've spent most of my career in human resources, but I didn't start out in HR.
Hmm.
I started in accounting and finance. And although I was doing well in that profession, I realized very quickly that I didn't see myself doing that work for the next 50, 60 years.
Right.
Life is long and careers are long. And so I wanted to do something that I truly felt a purpose to a connection to. And um, at the same time, I started to take some HR and leadership and strategy classes, and I felt like my career goals and my purpose, which we're going to talk about, was much more aligned with the field of human resources and helping organizations marry their business strategy with their talent strategy. And so that's why I started in this profession, and that's really what keeps me going
Mhm.
is the idea that hopefully I can, through my work, make work and workplaces better for other people.
That's amazing. I have a passion in the unlocking the potential of human development. And I think there's so much potential in people and to be focused on their strength and values and aligning all of that to the business strategies is what makes companies great. Can you
Mhm.
share with me some of your more rewarding work when it comes to engaging people?
Yes, I think some of the most rewarding experiences that I've had have been helping people unlock their full potential. So
Mhm.
helping leaders who maybe have low engagement or high turnover on their team turn things around through leadership coaching or training or a mix of learning modalities. And when you see a leader like that turn things around and you see over time their team starts to trust them a little bit more and speak up a little bit more because they're feeling like they have psychological safety and they can bring their ideas to the table and they can share dissenting viewpoints. when
Hmm.
they disagree with something. When you start to see that transition, that is one of the most rewarding things. Also, when you see people progress in their career, and when someone was maybe stuck and you helped their manager give them feedback and help them grow and develop a new skill set or hone existing skills, and then eventually you see that person get promoted and do it incredibly well, those are also really, really rewarding moments. And then the
Hmm.
last thing I'll say is, often in our work, I'm sure you encounter this too. You work with CEOs and founders who have one idea of how things should be. They perhaps sometimes feel that people and profit are at odds with each other. And then when you come in and propose an interesting or creative solution and help them realize that that is in fact not the case, and
Hmm.
in fact, your people are the ones who drive the profits and
Hmm.
both the top line and the bottom line. And when you see their mindset shift, and when
Hmm.
you see them start to shape their culture into a people first culture, that is probably one of the most rewarding things that people in professions like ours can do, right?
Yeah, yeah, I definitely can relate to that. I mean, I think some of the more rewarding engagements I've been on are around seeing the transformation of people, which transforms the business. And when leadership seizes that, it makes um, you know, such a fulfilling experience. And so, can you share with us a bit more about how a data-driven approach to business can unlock the potential in people?
Yes. So when we talk about data, it's important to understand that there's leading indicators and there's lagging indicators.
Hmm.
And you know this, right? So, for example, when you look at metrics, it's important to understand what this metric is telling you and what is the purpose of this metric. Is it
Hmm.
backward looking or forward looking? So, for example, when we look at turnover data, in our HR world, it's very helpful and
Hmm.
important to look at turnover data. And you would usually cut it by, turnover by region or country, turnover by function or team, even turnover by years of service or tenure. So you want to see our newer employees leaving faster than experienced employer, more tenured employees. And that's really, really important. But when you look at turnover data, it's important to understand that although it's helpful, there's not much you can do about it because these people have already left or are already leaving and giving
Hmm.
you feedback in your exit interview process.
Hmm.
So those are lagging indicators,
Hmm.
helpful to understand, but not much you can do to course correct.
Right.
What's important to look at is the leading indicators. In
Hmm.
addition to the turnover data, you would look at things like your employee engagement or employee sentiment analysis.
Hmm.
What are people saying in your stay interviews,
Hmm.
right? And so, what is making them stay? What would make them leave? Um,
Hmm.
do they have an intention to stay for the next 12, 24, 36 months? And when you marry that type of leading indicator data with the lagging indicator data, then you can start to put together and weave together a story about what is truly going on in our organization, both
Hmm.
at the team level and the enterprise level. And then you can start to take action to
Hmm.
improve or enhance your culture.
Hmm. That's amazing. You mentioned about stories, and I want to get your take on how we can weave in stories and tie into data to tell a full picture of what's currently happening at a business. So the way that I see data is really it links into our logic mind, and then stories is tied to our emotions, right? So what's your perspective in terms of leveraging stories in combining stories with data to tell a full picture of a business culture?
I could not agree more with what you just said. And I am so glad you brought this up
Hmm.
because I think many of us are guilty of um, showing dashboards and throwing
Hmm.
up dashboards on the screen and expecting, people on the executive team to kind of make sense of it. And I'm not just going to pick on the HR profession here. I've
Yeah.
seen many finance people do it, even even some product people. Usually, marketing people are better storytellers,
Hmm.
but many of us in the business world will throw up dashboards and think that that is it, and that our job is done. And the way that I have always trained my team on data storytelling is the dashboards or the KPIs or the metrics are the what.
Hmm.
So you're telling the executives what is going on by showing them the dashboards and the metrics. But then you need to take it a step further and go into the so what,
Hmm.
meaning what do all of these metrics mean for our business today, or for your team or your business unit or function today? And what are the business implications of these metrics that I'm showing you?
Hmm.
And then the next step is the now what.
Hmm.
So, based on the what, the metrics that I've showed you, and the so what, the business implications, now I think, executive, we should take X, Y, and Z actions.
Hmm.
And here's why these are the best actions. These are the other alternatives I've considered. And this is the cost, both the financial and the opportunity cost of implementing these actions. And what do you think? And so then you have a dialogue, right?
Hmm.
So now you've woven together a story. You've given them the what, you've given them the so what, you've given them the now what. And not only have you told a story, but you've given them something to react to. If you're
Hmm.
an executive and I just show you numbers, I'm not giving you much to react to. But if I
Hmm.
tell you these are the numbers, this is the story that I think the numbers are telling us. This is what I think is going on in your business, and this is what I think you need to do about it, Mr. Executive. Then I've given you something to react to, and we can have a constructive dialogue around it.
Hmm.
So that's how I think about data storytelling.
That's amazing. How can HR leaders play a crucial role in the business decision process? So often, what I see based on my client work are HR leaders having to have a conversation with their CEO about an initiative and getting approval from maybe not the CEO, but their CFO, which of course hosts a budget to the business. So how can HR leaders be more, how can they hold more of a influential role in the decision-making process, uh, and trusting that their skills and experience are such a tremendous value to the business, and that sometimes they don't need to go to a CFO for approval or CEO for approval. Can you speak a little bit about the decision influence and also decision process when it comes to being an HR leader?
Absolutely. So one thing we already talked about, which is use data and storytelling to your advantage.
Hmm.
The other thing I will say is the number one thing that you can do to influence the decision-making process and influence key leaders in your organization is understand the business.
Hmm.
Become an expert on your business. Sit down with your finance team and understand your P&L inside and out.
Hmm.
And what is our revenue trajectory or growth trajectory? What do our margins look like? What is our path to profitability if we're not yet profitable? What does
Hmm.
our cash burn look like? And the more you understand these things, the more you will understand what is on their mind, what is keeping them up at night, meaning the
Hmm.
CEO, the CFO, the chief growth officer, etc. And you'll start to understand how you can speak their language. So,
Hmm.
whether you are bringing an initiative to the table or asking for budget for something, you can then start to speak their language and help them understand if you're asking for something, how does this initiative that you're wanting to roll out tie into the goals of the business?
Hmm.
And how is it going to impact the P&L? So the more you understand the P&L, the more you understand who are our top customers,
Hmm.
what does our competitive landscape look like? The more you understand these things, the more you will be invited to take that proverbial seat at the table that so
Hmm.
many HR professionals are vying for. The other thing I will say is it's important to think as a business leader first and an HR leader second.
Hmm.
So, what I mean by that is before you go and ask for additional dollars, make sure that you are utilizing the existing pool of dollars in the
Hmm.
most efficient and effective way. So if I were the CEO and an HR person came to me asking for dollars for, let's say, an employee engagement initiative, I would want to first understand how are the other dollars that we've already allocated
Hmm.
being used? And are we seeing the ROI on those dollars? And
Hmm.
if not, have you, HR person, thought about reallocating dollars from this initiative to this initiative before we add incremental dollars? So when you come to the table with a proposal, it's important to also note these are
Hmm.
the other alternatives I've considered. I've tried to make sure that we are using every last penny effectively. And despite that analysis, I still feel we need to invest additional incremental dollars here, and
Hmm.
here's why. And then
Hmm.
the last thing I'll say is understand the art of the meeting before the meeting.
Hmm.
So decisions are rarely made in board meetings or big executive meetings like your
Hmm.
executive offsite, etc. Decisions are usually made in the meeting before the meeting. They're just formally ratified in those big meetings.
Right.
This is something that I did not understand early in my career. So I was a little bit naive about that. So what I would say is if you're trying to influence, go and talk to a few of the key influential people on the executive team individually. Certainly talk to your CFO and get them on board,
Hmm.
and talk to the people who are going to be the most difficult,
Hmm.
or they're going to be the naysayers, and get them to poke holes in your proposal and get them to be on board so that when you go to the big meeting and
Hmm.
present your proposal, you have, at least half the room on your side already.
Right. Yeah, that's beautiful. The fact that we have to go and talk to people who may not agree with us is an opportunity for us to um learn more about the type of perspective, the pushback that we'll receive, because to do any meaningful change within an organization, you're going to get pushback. And so by having a
Mhm.
full, I'd say 360, you know, review of the situation, you can actually come into the board meeting or that important decision-making meeting with armed with a holistic approach of how this change is going to require um, money or energy from people or whatnot. And so I think it's important that we have those individual meetings aside from the big meeting. Let's pivot a little bit. I know that before this recording, you and I mentioned a little bit about AI, and AI is a huge thing right now, as you know. So I'd love to get your take on how AI has impacted the world of HR and how we can leverage AI for our own use to drive business impact.
So many thoughts on this topic. So I think that this is our moment as HR professionals. I really do. I think for decades we have been bogged down by the administrative burden of
Hmm.
our roles. And this is our moment to really delegate a lot of those administrative monotonous tasks to AI and to our AI agentic workforce, and to focus on the strategic part of our jobs, the things that we've always wanted to do that we didn't necessarily have the time to do because we were so busy firefighting or so busy knee deep in spreadsheets. And this is also our moment to kind of bring the human back into human resources and really spend a lot of our time supporting our people because we know that they need it, especially in this moment. I mean, as you
Hmm.
know, worker anxiety is up. Loneliness is a huge public health crisis. People are struggling with financial anxiety and sort
Hmm.
of making ends meet and depression. And so people need us more than ever.
Hmm.
And so whether you have, the tools that take your engagement data and pull out themes within a couple minutes and give you those themes, where in the past, it used to take us weeks upon weeks to just pour through the comments and pour over all the results and then pull out the themes. And right, I used to read individual comments from employees and then categorize everything into themes and see which themes are standing out. I mean, now all of that work that used to take us weeks can happen in a couple of minutes. So
Right.
whether it's that or whether it's using AI to improve and personalize the employee experience, or whether it's using AI to improve recruiting or onboarding processes, I think the potential is
Hmm.
unlimited. But I think what keeps me up at night when it comes to AI is a couple of things. One, I'm concerned about, and I would be interested in your take on this. One, I am concerned about younger people. So entry-level folks who are just entering the workforce because entry-level jobs are disappearing fast.
Hmm.
So, the work that we used to do, like when I grew up in my career, I was drafting policies and drafting job descriptions and scheduling
Hmm.
interviews and, looking at engagement survey comments. And so many of these jobs and so much of this work is completely disappearing. So
Right.
the jobs are disappearing, which means future talent pipelines will be impacted. So if you don't have junior people, how are you going to produce senior people? And there's a lot of new grads, even grads from elite schools, elite MBA programs are having a hard time finding jobs. The other thing that really concerns me is if we take the drudgery away from people's plates, how are we going to deliberately create time and space for
Hmm.
people to be creative and for people to be more strategic and solve the bigger, more complex problems, right? So you can't just take away the drudgery and expect those same hours to go toward the strategic problem solving, right?
Hmm.
Because strategic thinking and strategic work requires higher, more cognitive power
Hmm.
than working on an expense report. So it's
Right.
not a one-to-one. The productivity gains are not linear.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of leaders have not yet understood that.
Hmm.
And that concerns me. And then the last thing I'll say is the gender gap in AI. And I think there's a huge
Mm, yeah.
glaring gender gap in AI. And that concerns me and keeps me up at night a little bit.
Yeah, and this is another topic that I'd love to get your input as well too on DEI and the current state of it and how, that ties into producing more opportunities for women and people of color and members of the LGBT plus Q plus community. I know that when I used to live in San Francisco, and my clients were, in the Bay Area, Silicon Valley, there's been a huge push to create inclusive cultures where people can actually feel like there's a sense of belonging, a sense that they matter. And so I'm afraid that with the current political landscape that we're in, that all that is being diminished and it's not creating a meaningful workplace for people, and the misrepresentation of DEI has done a tremendous negative impact on company culture. But before we dive a little deeper into the DEI path, I do want to comment that earlier you mentioned about perhaps getting my thoughts on AI and how we can leverage it for the betterment of all people, of all companies. And I feel like for me, we have to start educating people at a younger age versus wait until they've already kind of are graduating, right? And then finding jobs. I think we have to think about this upskilling, developing people skills uh, in an early stage career. Just because for people that are looking to get into workforce, they're going to have to be comfortable with leveraging technology, and if they aren't, then they will be the people that will be left behind. And so it takes a person to be, a person that, is successful, I think, is someone that is truly adaptable and resilient to change, which means that they're going to have to acquire knowledge, experience, expertise in other industries or areas to make them feel more confident about themselves and how they go about executing their responsibilities. And for example, I have a friend that has a child, and she just recently graduated, and she's in the same boat as what you were saying with other recent grads looking for work and not really sure how she's going to hold a future because of the way that technology has impacted the workplace. And so I had a chat with this recent grad because I'm in HR, and my friend asked me to, and so we had a meaningful conversation around upskilling, her skills to ensure that she is developing and acquiring the knowledge that's necessary in order to get the role that she wants and really make an impact in the business. And so I think, technology should start from early on in our careers. I think that people, higher education should really equip students with the skills they need to meet the demands of the current market, and also not just the current but future market as well too. And that means, I'm a junior in college, about to graduate, and I got to take a class on technology and AI. Maybe that could be a requirement that universities could implement to ensure that people are set up successfully as they enter into the workplace. What's your thought on like of that example? Do you think like, technology should start from early on, educating people early on in their careers, or what other ideas do you think could help perhaps solve the talent gap?
Yes, and
Hmm.
I think that even the jobs that, even the professions that were thought to be secure for so long, like computer science, right? A few
Hmm.
years ago, if you went to school for computer science, that's it, you were set, right? You're going to have secure, guaranteed employment for most of your career and you'll make good money. But now, actually, developer jobs are among the top jobs to disappear. As you saw, I think it was just this week or maybe last week, Microsoft said 30% of their code is written by AI. Meta is saying
Wow. Yeah.
by 2026, 50%, their goal is 50% of their code will be written by AI. And so I think that, until maybe 6 to 9 months ago, there were a lot of experts talking about how AI is not going to take your job, but someone who knows how to use AI will take your job. And
Right.
I don't even know if that's true anymore.
Hmm.
And the other thing is, a lot of people were saying, including myself, were saying, well, the human skills we will place a premium on the human skills, like empathy, creativity, etc.
Right.
And now AI is able to even mimic those. So
Mm.
if you look at Xiao in China, the AI chatbot, she has millions of fans and 165 million people have said I love you to her. And she's not even a real woman. People have real connection and real relationships with Xiao. And some might look at that and say, that's alarming. But for others, she is a lifeline and she helps people with real problems like loneliness and depression. And so, um, can you say, that this has gone too far? And who gets to decide that it's
Mhm.
gone too far? And so even those human skills are not sort of, secure. anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
so we have to rethink this idea that, oh, AI is not going to take your job. Someone who knows how to use AI will take your job, because I think AI is absolutely going to take jobs. It is already taking jobs. And so
Mm-hmm.
then the question becomes, well, then how do we prepare? And how do we prepare young people like your friend's daughter? And I think the
Mm-hmm.
only thing that I can think of in this moment is, because we don't know what we don't know,
Mm-hmm.
we can just work on two things, which is, one is continuous learning, which is what you alluded to in your conversation with her. So continue to learn new skills. And the second is be agile. The adaptability matters more than ever before, because these technologies are changing so fast.
Yeah.
Like a tool that you used, 3 months ago is already outdated because something else, something new has come up. And so you have to be agile. Be you have to adapt to new
Mm-hmm.
technology and tools that are coming out all the time, and to the new realities of the world around you. And so that is, my number one piece of advice to everyone, not just to young people, is continue to learn. You're never going to stop learning, and continue to adapt. And if you can work on those two things and you can be resilient,
Mm-hmm.
then you will be better positioned to navigate this new world of work.
Right. There's also a lot of talk about work-life balance and energy depletion. I think that's a huge one right now that we're seeing in the HR world. What's your take on that? How can we manage our energy and maintain a healthy mental and state of mind when there's all these constant changes around us and we have to be up to date with like the latest AI tool or be agile? How do we take care of ourselves in the process?
This is another topic that we could talk about for just and a whole hour just
Yeah,
dedicated to this topic.
I get it.
So I do think that burnout is a massive problem. So recently I solved rolled out their 2025, I think it was workplace trends report or voice of the workplace, something like that. Anyway, this report found that 79% of people, knowledge workers, are
Hmm.
burnt out. And so this is not, a problem that only a small portion of the population is experiencing. And I think this problem is only continuing to amplify because of your point, which is that so much is going on, not just information overload and so much new technology and news and information being thrown at us, but also everything else that's happening in the world, the
Hmm.
geopolitical landscape, the economic volatility, inflation, climate disasters. I mean, it doesn't stop, right?
Hmm. Right.
And I think that sometimes the mistake that we make in the business world is we treat burnout as an individual problem. And I think our first go-to solution is, oh, we'll roll out, yoga classes and meditation apps for our people. And I think that those perks or those benefits are great as part of a holistic employee well-being strategy.
Hmm.
But I think that those things in and of themselves are not solutions,
Hmm.
because clearly when 79% of the workforce is burned out, it's a systemic problem, not
Right.
an individual problem, right? And so I think people's bodies and minds are having a very natural reaction to
Hmm.
a world that is just chaotic. There's no other way to describe it. It's just
Hmm.
chaotic right now. It's rough out there. And
Right.
so I think when I talk to CEOs and founders and even board members, I try to get them to think about, what are you going to do from a systemic standpoint, from an enterprise level standpoint, to help people navigate this. So, for example, in the past, I've helped CEOs think about how they can reduce meeting fatigue for their
Hmm.
people.
Hmm.
Because, Asana data shows that 60% of our time at work is spent on work about work. So
Wow.
coordinating meetings, following up with each other, taking, meeting notes. Um, And these are the types of tasks that I think we
Hmm.
need to think about either removing or automating. And we need to think about how we can reduce the number of meetings on people's calendars and plates. Because if you think about what knowledge work is evolving into, knowledge work is becoming creative work because
Hmm.
AI is taking so much drudgery off our plates. And people cannot be creative and do the creative problem solving and the strategic work if
Hmm.
they are in back-to-back meetings 8 hours a day. And
Right,
then the real work happens between the hours of 7 p.m. to 11 p.m.,
right,
after
right.
the family dinner is done. And so that is the work that I try to do with CEOs is help them think about what are the systemic things that they can do in addition to the individual interventions like the yoga classes.
Hmm. Yeah. So it sounds like the short term. So if I were to say, what are the short term solutions to addressing burnout or workplace challenge, workplace balance? It's what I'm hearing from you is that if a company has a well-being program, employees should tap into that to see what resources that they can offer, right? So maybe that's taking a yoga class, in the middle of the day, or taking a walk outside, like encouraging the company is encouraging employees to, get their mindset out from work and do something that's gonna re-energize them, right? So like those are kind of like the short-term activities that employees can do immediately. Long-term goals is really having intentional conversations with CEOs and business executives about, what's the goal we're trying to aim here to ensure that we aren't creating a workplace of burnout and that our employees are going to be less engaged and less productive, right? And so I feel like in the world in the age of digital information, you're correct that the average employee at a company, is is filled with all of these resources and information, and that sometimes they're just at a decision pause where it's like, okay, I don't know which option to pick because there's so much information. So can somebody help me make a decision? Like even that itself is another conversation as well too, right? And so how do we help guide employees on a path that makes sense for them? Because, not everybody wants to take a yoga class. Not everybody wants to go for a 5-10 minute walk. And so, but at least we have options. And so I think it's important for HR leaders and even executive leaders to think about, their business in a way that is going to provide not just as many options as possible for employees, but also help guide them through the decision process so that they can make a decision that's right for them. Um, and so now let's step into the realm of DEI. Earlier, we talked about, having um, more women and people of color in the workplace. What's your take on the current landscape of DEI? How can we overcome some of these challenges that we're seeing in the media around rolling back DEI and all of that?
I think that the situation is perhaps not as dire as the headlines would have us believe.
Hmm.
I think that sometimes uh, the media does not report, often, not sometimes, often the media does not report on the good stuff
Hmm.
because, it's much easier to pull on the fear part of people's brains
Right.
through these dramatic headlines. And so we hear about the handful of companies that are dismantling their DEI initiatives and DEI departments. But we don't hear about how investment in DEI is only continuing to increase.
Hmm.
So the DEI kind of education and training industry and DEI as a function in general is continuing to see dollars being allocated toward this space.
Hmm.
And um, and the other thing is by definition, the demographics of the workforce just continue to become more diverse because we have
Mhm.
more diverse people in the workforce, not just in terms of race or ethnicity, but people who identify as neurodivergent,
Mhm.
people of different socioeconomic statuses. So all kinds of diversity is increasing. And the workforce, and we have five generations in the workplace for the first time ever.
Wow.
And so people bringing different perspectives. And so by definition, you are going to have diversity in your
Mhm.
organization, even if you are, not deliberately thinking about it or working toward it.
Mhm.
I think too many leaders focus on the numbers, like, do we have enough women? Do we have enough, but they don't think about the other side of the diversity coin, which is inclusion, which is,
Mhm.
are we creating the workspaces and workplaces for these individuals to thrive,
Mhm.
for everyone to thrive, not just women, not just people of color. It's about everyone. And the other thing I'll say is this moment is pushing a lot of leaders, both in HR and CEOs, to take a step back and reevaluate their DEI strategy. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing.
Mhm.
From time to time, you would look at any business program or initiative, and you would evaluate the ROI. You would evaluate whether it's doing the things that it said it would do, that you set out to accomplish when you rolled out this initiative at first. And so I encourage CEOs to look at whether their DEI program is performing as it should. And
Mhm.
if it's not, then absolutely make changes to it because that's what you would do with any business initiative. So treat DEI like a business initiative, but make sure that you actually invested in it in the
Mhm.
right way, and you didn't just hire a team on the side and you called them the DEI team, and then you made everything their problem, and you made fixing your culture their problem, and you as the CEO and this and the C-suite team were not setting the tone at the top and we're not doing the work. So like really evaluate whether your DEI program is successful.
Mhm.
And from there, if you determine that you need to make changes, that's fair. That's fine.
Mhm.
I think that the I don't know that DEI is going away. I think that the flavor of DEI now is changing.
Mhm.
And Gartner calls it embedded DEI. So I think the companies that are going to do the best DEI work are going to embed DEI into everything from recruiting and onboarding to offboarding and everything in between, the full employee life cycle.
Right.
And I think that's the way to do it.
Mhm.
Because if you have this DEI team on the side and then you have the rest of the business over here doing the real work,
Mhm.
right? Then that's
Yeah.
how DEI work kind of gets sidelined.
Right.
And so I think this flavor of DEI, the embedded DEI, is probably what we're going to see at least in the next 12 to 24 months. And I think that's a good thing. I do
Mhm.
think that it will only strengthen DEI programs and DEI initiatives. And some companies are, changing up their acronyms.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
they're focusing on belonging and inclusion. I've even seen JEDI, which is justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. So
Wow.
whatever the acronym is,
Yeah.
I don't think it matters what you call it.
Right.
It's about the work itself, and I don't think we should be deterred from the work.
Yeah. Yeah. I just want to read just a LinkedIn post that I saw the other day about a list of what DEI is. And it's ramps and sidewalk curb cuts, subtitles and captions on TV and in your phone, family restrooms, changing tables in men's restrooms, breastfeeding pump stations and accommodations, floating paid holidays, pay equity and transparency, parental leave, time and pay, coming back to a job after birthing a child, not having to just accept workplace harassment, accommodations for a variety of disabilities, flexible work arrangements. These are like at the most basic level what DI is, and
Mhm.
people are I'd say majority of the work of employees in the workplace are they have these rights because their HR leader fought for that for them. Their business implemented DEI initiatives to ensure that some of these activities I just listed could be embedded into the company. And so it's a shame and it's unfortunate that in the political space that the concept of DI has taken a negative connotation. And I get it, it's politics. People are trying to play into people's fears. Politicians are playing to people's fears, but we have to be hopeful as a HR practitioner, as a HR leader, business leader, coaching executives about thinking about DI in a broader spectrum. And to your point about acronyms, I've even spoken with a HR consultant, and he said, instead of naming DEI as it's his name, diversity, equity, inclusion, he calls it disruption, elevation, and innovation. And so whichever way that we reframe or rename DEI, to your point, it's still going to be there because it's good for business. Studies, McKinsey and Accenture have stated previously that DEI is um, you know great for innovation and impacts the bottom line of the company in a way that's very positive. So um, I've got just a few questions here left that I want to ask you before we call it. What's your definition of purpose?
So I think purpose is the intersection of the Venn diagram of what you value, what you're good at, and the impact you want to have on
Mm.
others. So it's not just about what you do, it's not just about the what, it's about the why, and it's about the who. So who benefits from your work? That's what I think.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's combining all of those elements together, and you call it fulfilling work, I would say, right? It's Are you doing something that's fulfilled? And for me, it is about making an impact on people's lives and by leveraging my interest in values and talent to make the world a better place. And so that's the reason why I do what I do with this podcast is really to make an impact in people's lives, to get them to think about purpose in a way that's not intimidating, but also but to make it more of a casual conversation where they can have with their friends or their family members. Because when we can tap into our sense of why, it really enriches our lives, I believe. And so, Malvika, this is such an incredible conversation. We could go on and on and on. I might have to re-invite you back into us to this podcast for a second talk. But if people are inspired by this conversation, where can they find you? How can they connect with you?
Yes, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. You can also visit my website, atvisgroup.com. That's ATVIS group.com. But if you want to chat about any and all things people, just send me a message on LinkedIn. That's the best way to connect.
That's beautiful. That's amazing. Any last advice, words you'd like to share before we take off?
Lately I've been doing a lot of coaching work, and I'm finding a theme that is a common sort of through line with a lot of people that I talk to. And I think many, many people are letting fear hold them back.
Hmm.
Whether it's, they're afraid that they might fail at something, or what will my coworkers think, or I might embarrass myself. And I came across this French phrase not too long ago that says "Le ridicule ne tue pas,"
Hmm.
which roughly translates to looking ridiculous or looking silly is not going to kill you. So, so the last piece of advice I would give to people is whatever it is, just go for it. Just whatever you want, just do it. Seize the opportunity because le ridicule ne tue pas.
That's beautiful. You're gonna have to send me that statement. I'm gonna have to try to
Yeah,
pronounce it. So
happy
But
to.
yeah, it sounds beautiful, and I'm all for that. Because like like I said to you earlier, I mean, we all have one shot at life, and we have to tap into our purpose to make meaningful change and make an impact. And so, thank you for reminding us what our true power is. And so, I appreciate you. I appreciate you showing up. Thank you so much for sharing your insight. And folks, if you are inspired by this talk, do feel free to connect with Malvika, and I'll include her contact information in the show notes, as well as please do like and share this podcast session with your friends and family, and I would appreciate the support. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.